Hello dreamers, Eugene the author here, and welcome to an Aria of Words with Eugene the author. So today's question is, how long have you been writing? And that is a very complicated question for me to answer. I tell people that I got serious about writing when I was 14, and so to that end, God, how old am I? Good God, I'm old. I have been writing seriously for 22 years now, right? Look, I'm an author, not a mathematician. 22 years. I tell people I got serious about writing when I was 14 years old, but really, I've been writing all my life. And I know that sounds like such an artsy hyperbole, but genuinely, my whole life, I have loved narrative. I've loved storytelling. I've loved story weaving. Culturally, we have the story weaver role in our culture, in our tribe, in our community. And the story weaver's duty was to keep the records of the family and of the culture, but also to tell stories that would at times be entertaining, but at times were morality plays, and at times were cautionary tales. And that was a role that my parents had, and a role that their parents had before them, and so on and so forth. And so I always picked that up from them as well. And I would always write these stories. I would fill these journals and journals with these stories, which is funny because now I cannot keep a journal for the life of me, but I would fill these journals with all these stories and all these concepts and all these ideas, and I would make comic books, and I would just do, I'd make board games, I would make tabletop RPGs. I actually designed 3 entire tabletop RPGs, like soup to nuts, start to finish. Juji Guy, The Warrior's Crossroads, The Nightmare Regalia. I don't remember the name of the third one. And then I also developed a line of novels that were created off of the idea of I took the game engines, the tabletop game engines that I made, and I created characters and I wrote like a campaign. And then I played the campaign, and win, lose, or draw, I had to find a way to make that work in a novel also. And that book's going to be coming out, I don't know, maybe middle of next year. But I serioused up about my writing when I was 14. And people ask all the time, how do you get started as a writer? I have these ideas. I want to be a writer. I want to be an author. I want to be a novelist. How do I get started doing that? And one of the pieces of advice that people give you, and it feels like, okay, if it were that simple, but one of the pieces of advice people give you is, if you want to be a writer, just write. And I've attended a lot of conferences. I've spoken to a lot of people at varying levels of the industry. And I think one of the things that established artists can do better is going beyond the blasé answer, going beyond the simple statement of, oh, if you want to be a writer, then write. If you want to be a screenwriter, write screenplays. If you want to be an author, write books. Like, it's a little bit more nuanced than that, even though that is true. So let me give you the step beyond the step. For me, I had to prove to myself that I could do it. Like a lot of you out there, I'm sure, I had so many stories that I would start and I would never finish, and I would get in my own head and I would second guess myself, and is this any good? Growing up, and honestly even in adulthood, it was very hard to find people that would read my work and give me feedback, like authentic feedback, right? Because I'll give you an example. So I used to compose music a lot. I don't really do it that often anymore. It's very time consuming, but I really enjoy it. I also used to play instruments before I injured my shoulder. I played viola, violin, bass, cello. I would compose these songs and I would try really hard to get my friends to listen to them and give me feedback. And the few times I could convince them to do it, I would get these very blasé responses. These very like, oh, it's all right, or it's not very good, or I hate it, right? So I started doing this experiment because I would listen to other artists in the indie scene, and I'd be like, I'm not bad, like comparing my work to their work, like it's comparable, I think it's fair to say that it's comparable. So I did this experiment, and I would compose songs, and I would just put them in the background. Friends would come over to hang out, and I would have music playing in the background, or we'd go for a drive and I'd put music on. And I wouldn't tell them that I was the one who did it. I would just play the song and be like, I'd wait like halfway through, right? And you see heads bobbing, you see toes tapping, you hear people humming along. And I'd be like, hey man, like this artist is pretty good, right? Like, what do you think about the song? And they'd be like, yo, this song goes hard. And then I'd be like, yeah, actually I composed that song. I made that song. And they'd be like, oh, it's all right. And even in my adulthood, I've had so many people that have, and this is getting a little bit sidetracky, but I think this is important. You'll have people in your life that want to have more of you than they are willing to give of themselves. And so you'll have those people that want you there for all their things and to talk about all their things, and they want you involved in all their things, but they won't tithe that same time back to you. And so getting friends and acquaintances to read your work is difficult, and it can be discouraging. If you've got a core group of friends that'll give you feedback and stuff, like hold on to them, that's awesome. And I've been very blessed now to have established that tight inner circle of fellow artists that are like that for me, that will give me real and honest feedback, and read my work and I'll read theirs, and we share and we build this awesome community. But I'm getting sidetracked. I had to prove to myself that I could do it, right? And this is gonna sound like a tangent, but I promise it's related. I grew up dealing with like a lot of bullying and a lot of, I survived some very unfortunate situations that I would love to talk about more, but the algorithm hates small channels, and if I say certain words, then this video will get blacklisted. So suffice it to say, I am a survivor. That term means something rather specific. You can suss out for yourself what I mean by that. And so I had all these voices in my head where I was like, okay, I know that I'm good at what I do, but am I really good at what I do? You know, and so I had all these stories that I would start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. And I had to prove to myself I could do it. So the very first like novel that I really completed, I was 14, and it was called More Than a Fairy Tale. And it was meant to be like four books in the series. I think I gave my sister, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I wrote the book. I finished the entire book. I just kept writing, and I would not let myself stop until I finished the book. And then I took it one step further. And I don't know if they're still around, but there was this group called Lulu. And I reached out to Lulu, and I put my book up, and I had them make a hard copy of it. And I had some little royalty-free clip art cover. I don't even remember what it was. Probably like solid colors and geometric shapes. And I had them send me a copy of this book. And when I held that book in my hands, and when I opened that book and I looked at it, and it was my words on that page, I cannot begin to describe the feeling. Now, you can't buy that book anywhere. It's not for sale. Someday, maybe. When I look back at that book, when I look back at a lot of my younger self's works that I thought were so amazing, I think my personal perspective on them is that my concepts were great, but my skill needed some more polish. And so I would not release that book in the state that it is in now, but I would definitely like polish it up and release a version of that book. But that was what it was for me. It's more than if you want to be a writer, then write. And we can get into all the aspects of the business another time, but just in terms of the completion, the art side of things, if you want to be a writer, then write, yes. But for me personally, I had to hold my words in my hands. I had to force myself to finish the book and give myself permission not to be 100% happy with the quality of it. And I had to take that extra step to have the book actually printed in a hardcover, real, legitimate, you could pick it up off of a shelf book. And the moment I held that book in my hands and I felt those pages and I ran my fingers across those words, and it was my words in a book, that's when I knew I could do it. If you enjoyed this video, then leaving a like would be a great way to let the algorithm know that you'd like more content like this, and subscribing is a fantastic way to let you know when I'm going to be uploading next. As always, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, anything whatsoever about your journey as an artist, or if there's any stories or any books, novels, games, whatever you'd like me to cover, you'd like me to discuss, because it's not just going to be like reviewing content, right? It's going to be really delving into the symbology, the meaning, the purpose, the prose, why some things work and others don't, why some things land and others fall flat. All of those things are going to be getting discussed in those deep dives. And so if you have anything you'd like me to cover, any questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to drop those in the comment section below, and we'll see you the next time. So as always, this is Eugene, the author, saying, you're awesome, be amazing, you already are. Take care, dreamers.